Marcus Chen floated through the maintenance tunnel of Orbital Station Kepler-7, his tool belt clanking softly against the metal walls. The emergency beacon had been pinging for 3 hours now, broadcasting from a derelict vessel that had drifted into their sector. As the station's chief engineer, it was his job to investigate potential salvage operations and clear navigation hazards. The derelict ship hung motionless against the starfield, its hull scarred by micrometeorite impacts and what looked like energy weapon burns. The vessel was clearly alien in design, with flowing curves and bioorganic components that seemed to pulse with a faint internal light. Marcus had seen plenty of alien ships during his 15 years working the Outer Rim, but this one was different. It felt wrong somehow, like a beautiful flower hiding poisonous thorns. "Station Control, this is Engineer Chen." Marcus spoke into his helmet comm as he approached the derelict in his maintenance pod. "I'm beginning my initial survey of the unknown vessel. Hull appears to be Zephyrian design, possibly a long-range transport or research ship." "Copy that, Marcus," came the voice of Station Commander Sarah Walsh. "Be careful in there. We've been tracking that ship for 6 hours, and it's been completely silent until that distress beacon started." Marcus maneuvered his pod to the ship's main airlock, noting the sophisticated docking mechanisms. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy for their advanced technology and peaceful nature. They rarely ventured into human space, preferring to keep to their own systems in the galactic core. Finding one of their ships this far out was unusual enough, but finding one apparently abandoned was almost unthinkable. The airlock cycled through its sequence with surprising efficiency for a derelict vessel. As the inner door opened, Marcus was struck by the ship's pristine interior. Emergency lighting cast everything in a soft blue glow, and the air felt clean and filtered. Too clean for a ship that had been drifting dead in space. Marcus activated his scanner and began walking through the main corridor. The readings were confusing. Life support was running at minimal levels. Gravity was functioning at about 60% normal, and there were definitely power sources active throughout the ship. This wasn't a derelict at all. It was a ship running in stealth mode. The corridor opened into what appeared to be the main living area. Zephyrian design philosophy emphasized organic curves and natural materials, so the space felt more like walking through a living tree than a spacecraft. Bioluminescent panels provided gentle illumination, and the floor had a soft, almost spongy texture that absorbed sound. That's when Marcus heard it. A faint tapping sound. Rhythmic and deliberate. It was coming from somewhere deeper in the ship, past what looked like the main control center. Marcus checked his atmosphere readings again. The air was breathable for humans, though rich in nitrogen compounds that the Zephyrians preferred. Following the tapping sound, Marcus made his way through a series of smaller chambers that might have been crew quarters. Each room was perfectly maintained but empty, as if the occupants had simply vanished. Personal items were still in place, meals half finished on tables, but no sign of the crew. The tapping grew louder as Marcus approached what his scanner identified as the ship's lower deck. A spiral ramp led downward, and the organic walls here seemed more alive somehow, with a subtle pulse that matched a slow heartbeat. The temperature was slightly warmer, and Marcus noticed his scanner picking up several life signs ahead. At the bottom of the ramp, Marcus found himself in what could only be described as the ship's heart. Massive biomechanical systems lined the walls, pulsing with energy and pumping fluids through transparent tubes. But it wasn't the ship's life support systems that made Marcus stop in his tracks. It was the containment fields. 6 Zephyrians hung suspended in glowing energy fields, their elongated forms motionless but clearly alive. They were tall and graceful beings with pale blue skin and large, multifaceted eyes that could see across several light spectrums. Their limbs were longer than human proportions, with delicate hands that ended in precise, tool-like fingers. Each Zephyrian wore a simple garment that seemed to shift color based on their emotional state, now all displaying patterns of distress and fear. Marcus approached the nearest containment field, and the Zephyrian's eyes immediately focused on him. The being's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. The containment field was apparently blocking audio as well as physical movement. The Zephyrian's hands moved frantically, pointing toward a control panel near the ship's central core. Understanding flooded through Marcus as he studied the setup. This wasn't a crew quarters or even a prison. It was a mobile laboratory. And the Zephyrians weren't prisoners in the traditional sense. They were experimental subjects. Marcus activated his comm system. Station control. I need you to run a deep scan on this vessel immediately. I'm sending you the ship's identification codes now. He uploaded the data from his scanner while studying the containment system. Marcus, what's your status? Commander Walsh's voice crackled through the comm. I've found the crew, Sarah, but there's a problem. They're being held in some kind of containment system. This isn't a Zephyrian ship at all. Someone's captured these beings and they're using this ship as a mobile prison. The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. Space piracy was one thing, but taking sentient beings for experimentation was forbidden by every civilized species in the galaxy. The Zephyrians were known for their advanced medical knowledge and their unique biological adaptations to zero-gravity environments. Someone was clearly exploiting these traits. Marcus examined the control panel the first Zephyrian had indicated. The symbols were definitely not Zephyrian, though they'd been overlaid on top of the original ship controls. The writing looked similar to Corvani script, but with modifications that suggested it might be from one of their splinter colonies. The Corvani had always pushed the boundaries of acceptable research. Their society valued knowledge and advancement above almost everything else, sometimes to the point where ethical considerations became secondary concerns. Most of the galactic community tolerated their eccentric research methods as long as they kept to themselves. But if they were now capturing other species for experimentation, that tolerance would evaporate quickly. Marcus tried to interface his scanner with the control panel, hoping to find a way to safely disable the containment fields. The system was more complex than anything he'd encountered before, with multiple layers of security and what appeared to be biological locks tied to non-human physiology. Shutting down the wrong system could kill the prisoners, or worse, trigger some kind of automated defense. The ship suddenly shuddered, and Marcus felt a vibration through the deck plating. His comm system immediately activated. Marcus, we've got company. Commander Walsh's voice was tense. 3 ships just dropped out of hyperspace, and they're heading straight for your position. Configuration matches Corvani research vessels, heavily armed. Marcus looked at the 6 Zephyrians trapped in their energy prisons. Each one was watching him with those large, intelligent eyes that seemed to hold both hope and resignation. These beings had probably been captives for months, possibly years. They'd given up hope of rescue long ago. But now a human engineer was standing in front of their prison, and that spark of possibility had returned. Sarah, I need you to prepare for immediate evacuation protocols, but I'm not leaving these beings here. Marcus, you don't have time to figure out that system. If those Corvani ships reach you, they'll either destroy the evidence or take you prisoner too. Marcus stared at the control panel, his engineering mind racing through possibilities. The system was designed by someone who understood Zephyrian physiology intimately, which meant they'd been studying these prisoners for a long time. But every system had weaknesses, and Marcus had built his reputation on finding solutions that others missed. The first rule of engineering was understanding what you were working with. The second rule was knowing when to break the first rule. Marcus pulled out his plasma torch and aimed it at the control panel's power coupling. Sometimes the most elegant solution was also the simplest one. If he couldn't unlock the prison, he'd just have to break it open. The Zephyrians seemed to understand what he was planning. Several of them began gesturing more frantically, their color-changing garments shifting to what Marcus hoped were patterns of encouragement rather than warning. As Marcus prepared to cut into the alien system, he couldn't help but think about how this situation perfectly illustrated the difference between human and Corvani approaches to problems. The Corvani had built an elaborate, sophisticated prison that accounted for every possible variable and contingency. They'd spent months or years perfecting their containment system, making it virtually impossible to escape from the inside. But they'd never considered the possibility that someone might simply choose to break their carefully crafted prison from the outside. Consequences be damned. Marcus smiled grimly as he activated the plasma torch. Let's see how your perfect system handles some good old-fashioned human stubbornness. The torch cut through the first power coupling in a shower of sparks, and the ship's lighting immediately shifted to emergency mode. One of the containment fields flickered, but held steady. Marcus moved to the next coupling, hoping he could free the prisoners before the Corvani ships arrived, and before he accidentally triggered whatever fail-safe systems might be built into this floating laboratory of horrors. The second power coupling split apart under Marcus's plasma torch, sending cascades of orange sparks across the organic walls. The ship groaned around him as backup systems activated, and suddenly, the first containment field collapsed entirely. The Zephyrian inside dropped to the deck, gasping and clutching at their throat with those elongated fingers. Marcus rushed to the freed alien's side, pulling out his emergency oxygen mask. "Easy there. I've got you. Can you understand me?" The Zephyrian's large eyes focused on Marcus with surprising clarity. And when they spoke, their voice was melodic but strained. "Human? You are human?" "Yes. We thought. We hoped someone would come. I'm Marcus Chen, Orbital Engineer. We're getting you out of here. But I need to know if there are any booby traps in this system. If I cut the wrong thing, will it hurt the others?" The freed Zephyrian struggled to sit up, their color-changing garment now displaying patterns that Marcus interpreted as determination mixed with urgency. "My name is Lyran Starwhisper. I was the ship's navigation specialist before they took us. The containment system has a deadman switch. If main power fails completely, it will flood our cells with neural toxins." Marcus's blood ran cold. "How long do we have?" "Minutes only. But the emergency power coupling behind the neural interface node, if you overload it instead of cutting it, it will create feedback loop. The system will interpret as maintenance cycle and release us all safely." Marcus looked at where Lyran was pointing. The neural interface node was a writhing mass of biomechanical components that looked like a cross between a computer terminal and some kind of deep-sea creature. Organic tubes pulsed with glowing fluids, and metallic components sparked with electrical activity. The emergency power coupling was buried deep within the mass, barely visible among the twitching appendages. "Lyran, I need you to tell the others what's happening. If this goes wrong..." "It will not go wrong, human Marcus," Lyran interrupted, their garment now displaying patterns of confidence. "I have watched them work on this system for many cycles. I understand its function better than they realize. Your approach is crude, but effective. Very human." "Yes?" Marcus couldn't tell if that was meant as a compliment or an observation, but he didn't have time to ask. His comm system crackled with an urgent transmission from station control. "Marcus, the Corvani ships are accelerating. You've got maybe 10 minutes before they reach you. We're launching a rescue pod. But you need to be ready to leave immediately." "Almost done here, Sarah." Marcus studied the neural interface node, looking for the best approach. The organic components reacted to his presence, twisting away from his scanner as if they were alive and aware of his intentions. "Just need to perform some impromptu surgery on an alien computer system." Lyran was now moving among the other containment fields, speaking rapidly in their own language. The trapped Zephyrians responded with what looked like gestures of understanding and encouragement. Their garments all shifted to similar patterns of hope mixed with anxiety. Marcus approached the neural interface node with his plasma torch set to its lowest power setting. He'd need to be precise to overload the emergency coupling without damaging the surrounding systems. The organic components writhed more violently as he got closer, and several of the mechanical appendages actually swung toward him, as if trying to block his access. "It's trying to defend itself," Marcus muttered, dodging a particularly aggressive mechanical arm. "Yes," Lyran confirmed, supporting themselves against the wall as they recovered from their long imprisonment. "The Corvani built this ship to be intelligent. It learns and adapts. It knows you are trying to free us, so it resists." Marcus had dealt with smart ships before, but usually they were on his side. Fighting against an AI that was actively trying to stop him added a whole new level of complexity to the situation. He feinted toward one side of the neural node, then quickly moved to the other side when the defensive appendages followed his movement. The emergency power coupling was now exposed. A crystalline component, about the size of his fist, that pulsed with contained energy. Marcus aimed his plasma torch carefully and began applying focused heat to specific points on the crystal's surface. The goal was to create stress fractures that would cause controlled overload, not complete destruction. The ship suddenly lurched to one side. and Marcus had to grab onto the neural node to keep from falling. The organic components recoiled from his touch, but he managed to maintain his aim on the power coupling. "Marcus, the Corvani ships are launching some kind of boarding pods." Commander Walsh's voice was getting staticky as the distance increased. "Whatever you're doing, do it faster." The stress fractures in the power coupling were spreading in exactly the pattern Marcus had hoped for. Energy readings were climbing rapidly as the crystal began to overload. But instead of failing catastrophically, the excess power was feeding back into the containment system's control matrix, just as Lyran had predicted. One by one, the remaining containment fields began to flicker and weaken. The second field collapsed entirely, releasing another Zephyrian, who immediately began helping their newly freed companion. The third field failed moments later, then the fourth. Marcus watched his scanner readings as the feedback loop propagated through the entire system. The Corvani designers had built multiple redundancies into their prison, but they'd never anticipated someone deliberately creating a controlled overload in the emergency power system. The ship's AI was trying to compensate, but the feedback was spreading faster than it could adapt. The fifth containment field collapsed with a flash of blue light, and suddenly there were only 5 Zephyrians free and 1 still trapped. But something was wrong with the last field. Instead of weakening like the others, it was actually growing stronger, drawing power from somewhere else in the ship's systems. "The last one is different," Lyran said, moving to Marcus's side. "That is Keeper Venth Moonwarden, our expedition leader. The Corvani. They have done more experiments on Venth. The containment field is integrated with neural interface, cannot be freed the same way." Marcus studied the enhanced containment field holding their leader. The energy patterns were completely different from the others, with direct neural connections feeding into the Zephyrian's head through what looked like invasive probes. Removing those connections wrong could cause permanent brain damage or death. How long has Keeper Venth been connected like this? Many cycles. The Corvani. They wanted to access our navigation memories. Keeper Venth knows the locations of many Zephyrian worlds. They have been slowly extracting this information. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest. What the Corvani were doing went beyond simple imprisonment. They were literally stealing memories from a sentient being, violating their mind as well as their body. It was torture on a level that most civilized species would find unthinkable. The ship lurched again, more violently this time. Through the deck plating, Marcus could feel the vibrations of docking clamps engaging. The Corvani boarding party had arrived. "We need to go," Marcus said, looking at the 5 freed Zephyrians. "I'm sorry, but I don't know how to safely disconnect your leader from that system." "We will not leave Keeper Venth," one of the other Zephyrians spoke up. Their garment displayed patterns of absolute determination. Better to die together than live with dishonor. Marcus understood their position, but he also understood that staying meant certain death or recapture for all of them. The Corvani wouldn't make the same mistakes twice. If they retook the ship, they'd implement much stronger security measures. That's when Marcus noticed something interesting about the neural interface connections. They weren't just extracting information from Keeper Venth, they were also feeding information back into their brain, probably to keep them sedated and compliant during the extraction process. But that two-way connection meant the system was vulnerable to feedback in the other direction. Lyran, what would happen if we reversed the information flow? Instead of the system reading your keeper's memories, what if we forced the system's memory banks into their brain? Lyran's large eyes widened with understanding. Keeper Venth's mind would be filled with the ship's knowledge. They would know everything the system knows about Corvani operations, other prisoners, research sites. But would they survive it? Unknown. Zephyrian minds are adaptable. But the amount of information, it could cause permanent damage. Or it could make Keeper Venth the most knowledgeable being in this sector about Corvani activities. Marcus could hear sounds from the upper decks now. Heavy footsteps, and what sounded like energy weapons charging. The boarding party was making their way through the ship, probably following his energy signature from the disabled containment system. It's their choice, Marcus decided. Can we communicate with Keeper Venth while they're connected? Lyran moved to the neural interface and placed their hands on specific points around the connection ports. The interface responded to their touch, and suddenly Keeper Venth's eyes opened within the containment field. Those ancient, wise eyes immediately focused on Marcus with startling intensity. When Keeper Venth spoke, their voice came through the ship's communication system, rather than their own mouth. "Human engineer. You offer us a choice between certain death and possible transformation? That's about the size of it, Keeper. I wish I had better options. In our culture, we believe that knowledge shared becomes knowledge multiplied. If I can survive the transfer, the information I gain could help protect other species from this fate. It is a worthy risk." Marcus nodded and moved to the neural interface control panel. "Lyran, I'm going to need you to guide me through the reversal process. Everyone else, guard the entrances. If the Corvani get down here before we finish this, we're all in serious trouble." The sound of weapons fire echoed from somewhere above them. Marcus's rescue team had apparently engaged the boarding party, buying them precious time. But he could hear the weapons fire getting closer, which meant the Corvani were winning the engagement. Marcus began adjusting the neural interface settings under Lyran's guidance. The process was delicate, requiring precise timing to avoid damaging either Keeper Venth's mind or the ship's database. As they worked, Marcus couldn't help but think about the irony of the situation. The Corvani had built this system to steal knowledge. But now that same system was going to be used to steal their secrets. It was, Marcus reflected, a very human solution to an alien problem. When faced with a complex system designed to be impenetrable, humans had a tendency to find unexpected ways to turn that complexity against itself. "Ready?" Marcus asked, his hand hovering over the activation control. Keeper Venth's voice came through the speakers one more time, calm and resolved. "We are ready to learn what our captors have hidden from the galaxy." Marcus triggered the reversal sequence, and the neural interface exploded into activity. The neural interface came alive with cascading energy patterns that made Marcus's scanner readings spike into dangerous territory. Keeper Venth's body convulsed within the containment field as terabytes of information flooded into their consciousness. The organic components of the system writhed and pulsed as if in pain, while mechanical elements sparked and overloaded from the massive data transfer. Marcus watched the transfer progress on his scanner, trying to balance the flow rate to avoid overwhelming Keeper Venth's neural capacity while ensuring they received the maximum amount of information. The Zephyrians' vital signs fluctuated wildly, but their brain activity showed patterns Marcus had never seen before, as if their mind was rapidly expanding to accommodate the incoming data. "Keeper Venth is strong," Lyran said, monitoring their leader's condition through some kind of empathic connection. "They are not just receiving the information, they are analyzing it, organizing it, making it part of themselves." The sound of weapons fire was getting much closer now, and Marcus could hear voices shouting commands in the clicking, rapid-fire language of the Corvani. The boarding party had apparently overcome his rescue team and were now making their way toward the ship's heart where Marcus and the Zephyrians were trapped. "How much longer?" Marcus asked, eyeing the entrance ramp while adjusting the transfer rate. "The system's database is extensive," Lyran replied, their garment displaying patterns of concern mixed with amazement. "But Keeper Venth's mind is processing faster than should be possible. They are not just downloading information, they are understanding it, seeing connections the Corvani themselves might have missed." Suddenly, the energy patterns around the neural interface changed dramatically. Instead of the chaotic cascade of data transfer, the flow became organized, purposeful. Keeper Venth was no longer just receiving information. They were actively searching through the database, following specific data pathways. "They're in control now," Marcus realized. Keeper Venth has gained administrative access to the ship's systems. As if responding to Marcus's observation, the ship's lighting changed from emergency red to normal operational status. The organic walls shifted color and texture, becoming more like the natural Zephyrian design Marcus had first observed. Even the air circulation changed, carrying subtle scents that reminded Marcus of growing things and clean water. "Keeper Venth is reclaiming our ship," one of the other Zephyrians said, their voice filled with wonder. "They are purging the Corvani modifications and restoring our original systems." The sound of the approaching boarding party suddenly stopped, replaced by confused shouting and what sounded like equipment failures. Marcus could hear Corvani voices calling for technical support and reporting that their weapons and scanning equipment had stopped functioning. "The ship is defending itself," Marcus said with admiration. "Keeper Venth is using the Corvani's own modifications against them." Through the ship's communication system, Keeper Venth's voice emerged. But it was different now. Stronger, deeper, carrying harmonics that resonated through the organic walls. "Human Marcus Chen, your rescue attempt has succeeded beyond what any of us hoped. The knowledge I have gained reveals the scope of Corvani operations throughout this sector. 17 research sites, 43 captured ships, hundreds of imprisoned beings from a dozen different species." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What they discovered wasn't just one illegal research operation. It was an entire network of facilities conducting unauthorized experiments on sentient beings. The Corvani had been systematically capturing and studying other species for what appeared to be decades. "Can you access their communication networks?" Marcus asked. "If we can gather evidence of the full operation, we might be able to shut the whole thing down." "Already in progress," Keeper Venth replied. "I am downloading their complete database, including personnel records, facility locations, and research data. But I am also doing something else. I am broadcasting this information to every major communication relay in this sector." Marcus grinned. That was a brilliantly human strategy being executed by an alien intelligence. Instead of trying to keep the information secret until they could deliver it to proper authorities, Keeper Venth was making it public immediately. Every government, news organization, and enforcement agency in the sector would receive complete documentation of the Corvani illegal research network within the hour. The sound of the boarding party had now changed to panicked retreat as their equipment continued to fail. Through the ship's sensors, Marcus could see the Corvani soldiers stumbling through corridors where the organic walls had become actively hostile, creating barriers and redirecting airflow to confuse and disorient the intruders. "The Corvani boarding ships are attempting to withdraw," Keeper Venth reported, "but I have disabled their docking clamps. They will remain attached until proper authorities arrive." Marcus's comm system suddenly crackled with an incoming transmission. But it wasn't from station control. The voice was clearly Corvani, speaking accented standard with the rapid, clicking undertones of their native language. "Unknown vessel. This is Research Director Klixtal of the Corvani Science Collective. You are interfering with authorized research activities. Release our personnel and surrender the stolen data immediately." Keeper Venth's response came through every communication channel simultaneously, broadcasting on frequencies used by military, civilian, and diplomatic networks throughout the sector. "Research Director Klixtal, I am Keeper Venth, Moon Warden of the Zephyrian Exploration Fleet. Your authorized research constitutes illegal imprisonment and torture of sentient beings. The evidence of your activities is now being broadcast to every major authority in this sector of the galaxy." Marcus could hear the panic in the Corvani director's voice when they responded. "You do not understand the importance of our research. The knowledge we are gathering will benefit all species in the galaxy. These small sacrifices serve the greater good of scientific advancement." "Director," Marcus interrupted, activating his own comm system. "This is Engineer Marcus Chen representing the Human Colonial Authority. I've documented your entire operation here, and I can guarantee that every civilized government in this sector is going to be very interested in your definition of small sacrifices. You're going to have some explaining to do." The containment field around Keeper Venth finally dissolved entirely, and the Zephyrian leader stepped onto the deck for the first time in months. But they were no longer the same being who had been imprisoned in the Corvani system. The neural interface had left visible changes, with bioluminescent patterns now flowing beneath their skin, and their eyes displaying a depth of knowledge that seemed almost overwhelming. "The transformation is complete," Keeper Venth said, speaking directly now rather than through the ship's systems. "I carry within my mind the complete record of Corvani research activities spanning 4 decades. But more than that, I understand now how to prevent such operations in the future." Marcus studied the transformed Zephyrian leader. "Are you still yourself?" Keeper Venth smiled, an expression that was both familiar and somehow enhanced. I am more myself than I have ever been. The Corvani believed they were stealing our knowledge, but instead they have given me theirs, and I intend to use it to ensure that no other beings suffer as we have suffered. Through the ship's sensors, Marcus could see vessels dropping out of hyperspace around their position. The broadcast evidence had worked faster than anyone could have expected. Ships bearing the insignia of the Galactic Enforcement Corps, the Zephyrian Defense Fleet, and even some human colonial authority cruisers were taking up positions around the Corvani research vessels. Looks like the cavalry has arrived, Marcus observed. Indeed, Keeper Venth agreed. But this is only the beginning. The knowledge I now possess will help us locate and liberate the other research sites. The Corvani network extends far beyond what anyone realized. Marcus's comm system activated with a transmission from one of the newly arrived ships. This is Admiral Saren of the Galactic Enforcement Corps. All vessels in this area are ordered to maintain position for investigation and evidence gathering. We have received extraordinary claims about illegal research operations and need to verify the submitted data. Keeper Venth moved to the ship's communication console. Their enhanced understanding of the systems allowing them to interface directly with the organic controls. Admiral Saren, I am transmitting the complete Corvani research database to your vessels now. You will find detailed records of 17 illegal research facilities, documentation of experiments conducted on 43 different species, and evidence of technology theft spanning 4 decades. There was a long pause before the Admiral responded. Keeper Venth, the amount of data you're transmitting is extensive. Our initial analysis confirms multiple violations of interspecies law, unauthorized imprisonment, and illegal experimentation. This is the largest criminal operation we've uncovered in over a century. Marcus looked around at the freed Zephyrians, who were now working together to restore their ship's systems to full operational status. Despite their ordeal, they moved with purpose and determination, their color-changing garments displaying patterns of hope and resolution. What happens next? Marcus asked Keeper Venth. The enhanced Zephyrian leader considered the question while monitoring the ongoing transmissions between the Galactic Enforcement Corps and the increasingly desperate Corvani ships. Next, we begin the process of justice and liberation. The knowledge I have gained includes the locations of prisoners throughout the Corvani network. Some have been captive for years, subjected to experiments that make our experience seem mild by comparison. Marcus nodded. You'll have support from the Human Colonial Authority. What happened here goes against everything we believe about the rights of sentient beings. Action after right. I'm making. And heaven round. I'm sound. Your species has an interesting approach to problem solving, Keeper Venth observed. When faced with a complex system designed to be impenetrable, you chose to break it, rather than try to work within its parameters. This directness is both crude and effective. Sometimes the best solution is the simplest one, Marcus replied. Though I have to admit, having you turn their own system against them was pretty satisfying. Through the ship's viewports, Marcus could see the Corvani research vessels being boarded by Galactic Enforcement troops. The illegal research network that had operated in secret for decades was being dismantled in a matter of hours. All because one human engineer had refused to accept that a sophisticated prison couldn't be broken with the right application of determination and a plasma torch. As the immediate crisis wound down, Marcus found himself thinking about the broader implications of what they'd discovered. The Corvani network had been capturing and experimenting on beings from across the galaxy, but they'd made a crucial error in their approach. They'd assumed that intelligence and sophistication were the same thing, that a complex system was automatically a superior one. But humans had learned long ago that the most elegant solution was often the most direct one. When faced with a locked door, sometimes the best approach wasn't to pick the lock or find the key. Sometimes you just had to kick the door down and deal with the consequences later. Keeper Venth approached Marcus as the engineer prepared to return to his maintenance pod. Human Marcus, your actions today have saved not just our lives, but the lives of hundreds of other beings throughout this sector. How do we properly express gratitude for such a gift? Marcus smiled and checked his equipment one final time. You don't need to thank me, Keeper. Helping people is what we humans do. It's who we are. When we see someone in trouble, We don't calculate the odds, or analyze the situation to death. We just act. As Marcus prepared to leave the reclaimed Zephyrian ship, he reflected on how this encounter perfectly illustrated what made humanity unique among the galaxy's species. Other races might have more advanced technology, better ships, or more sophisticated research methods, but when it came to the simple, stubborn refusal to abandon people in need, humans were unmatched. Sometimes, Marcus thought as he sealed his helmet, the galaxy needed less sophistication and more determination. Sometimes what was needed wasn't a brilliant solution, but just someone willing to break the rules and face the consequences. And sometimes, all it took to change the galaxy was one orbital engineer with a plasma torch and the absolute conviction that no prison was strong enough to hold innocent people when a human decided to set them free.